Robin Sharma, as you were mentioning, did influence me a lot. Joined the 5am, even though the book was not out. The 5am Club book was out later. But it influenced a lot. The influence is good. Action is better. Right? So action had to happen because of the book, The One Thing, which is just asking a question in 2017 December that what is the one habit I can develop in 2018 such that by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary.
Hello. Hi there. Welcome to the Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help professional students, IT employees, and entrepreneurs to shape their careers. Dear listeners, in every episode, we interact with industry experts or academicians or coaches across the globe to drive some insightful conversations that will help our audience learn great things. Also, we share an interesting trivia or a fun fact about the IT world or technology towards the end. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and I'm with my co-host Sudhakar. Human race has been selling and buying things forever. Like anything, even the sales process has been evolving for betterment. And in today's session, let us talk about how to crack the code of extraordinary sales. And we are pleased to welcome Amit to our show.
Amit Agarwal is a salespreneur and author. As a salespreneur, he believes that sales is social entrepreneurship because every sale is an opportunity to bring in joy, generate livelihood, create customer value, and of course, build wealth for the economy. Amit has sold in 23 countries across bootstrapped and funded technology startups. He is also the author of the best-selling book, The Ultimate Sales Accelerator. Amit, welcome to our show.
Thank you, Sudhakar and Naveen. Pleasure to be here.
So, Amit, salespreneur, very interesting. Can you please share our audience with what this salespreneurship is all about?
Yeah, so Sudhakar, it is interesting and it came by asking a question. So when I was finishing my book, The Ultimate Sales Accelerator, the epilogue section, if you see, it says the question there is, who will harness the true spirit of sales? The end of the book. So when that question was asked, I believe that questions creates possibilities and participation. And that participation can be from universe also, because the larger universe starts helping you. And therein this salespreneur concept came. So basically, salespreneur is all about harnessing the higher purpose in sales. And how do we harness that? It is because of three things. So first of all, salespreneur believes that sales is a life skill. If I ask you, Sudhakar, Naveen, is sales a life skill? What would you respond? Yes or no?
I would say yes. Like in the introduction, Naveen was mentioning, this has been there forever, right? Maybe the first thing that human beings did was trading, exchanging.
Correct. So you're correct. So sales is a life skill because at any point of time, we are selling three things, either a product or a service or an idea. Like for example, through this talk show, you are selling ideas and inspiring people, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Correct. So that is the first point.
Absolutely.
Sales as a life skill. The second is about the definition of sales. So when I asked this question, what does the word sales represent? I got an answer that sales represent the following. S for serve, A for authenticity, L for love, E for expertise, and S for smile. So serve with authenticity, love, expertise, and smile. So that is the second part which a salespreneur believes in. The third part is about four specific items. The first is joy. Sales creates joy. And anytime sales happen, it creates joy, isn't it? Look at organization, look at anywhere, it creates joy. The second is livelihood. A salespreneur believes that sales creates livelihood for colleagues, for employees, because whatever work he or she is doing is bringing in salary of somebody. The third is the economic growth. For a moment, imagine if sales is not happening, which was the case in COVID scenario. Then what was happening? The entire economy was down. So every sale is an opportunity to create economic growth. A person may not know, but every sale is influencing the stock market. And the fourth is customer value. That whatever sale is being done, is it generating tangible and intangible customer value? So if you summarize these three things, those sales as a life skill, correct? The definition of sales, correct? The serve with authenticity, love, expertise, and smile. And the third is the four higher purpose elements, which is joy, livelihood, economic growth, and customer value. That is what a salespreneur believes.
excellent. While all four are really important, I am more connected to joy. It is always about bringing demand to supply, right? If I want something to be purchased, for example, I want to buy a stock. You talked about stock. So if I want to buy a stock in New York Stock Exchange, for some time that opportunity was not available for me. So now, because of that sales, now the supplier or the demand actually is getting connected, converged. So that is an amazing one. So all four are great things, but I got connected to joy.
Absolutely.
So Amit, you talked about COVID. I think in the current generation, no discussion can end without touching our friend COVID-19.
Yeah.
So during COVID, especially during the peak, say June, July 2020, nothing was immune from pandemic. So how did the sales strategy change during these pandemic times? Because everyone is talking about transformation and COVID accelerating that transformation and fast pacing that transformation. How about the sales side?
Yeah, that's a valid question. In fact, everybody was impacted by COVID from a professional and personal perspective. From a professional perspective, one function which was deeply impacted, which we just spoke, that sales were not happening. So I think the concept there has been virtual selling, which was there earlier also. They say that human behavior, adoption increases when there are challenges. So the virtual selling was there earlier also. The adoption of virtual selling increased primarily because of COVID, because people were not meeting face to face. Now, if we look at virtual selling, there are three elements to it. One is the people element. There is a process element, and then there is a tool element. Let's pick one by one. So people element, sometimes we often ignored that any change, how easy or difficult it is on people. So people, I remember during April, May last year, talking to one of the sales owner, and I asked him, how are you? And the person said, I don't have a job. And I was surprised. I know he has a job, a very nice one. Why is he saying, I don't have a job? And then he said, that I can't meet my customers in person. If I can't meet my customers in person, I'm only in my home. I don't have a job. And you look at the mindset in April, May, that is what COVID was doing. On one hand, we have to do virtual selling. On the other hand, the people, the mindset, it was not ready. Over time, I have seen in another example, another person who was very resistant to virtual selling excelled in it. I think 6 months down the line, that same one other person created more than $1 million deal in virtual selling. So the point is people, and there I would say, while change is there, patience is the key. Being kind to people is the key rather than forcing that you have to adopt virtual selling today only. So that aspect. The second aspect is process. So if you look at process, when we were doing face-to-face selling, if suppose I meet you, Sudhakar and Naveen, you can see my body, you can see my expressions, correct? You can see how am I looking, correct? How am I dressed? And you can also make perceptions out of it, isn't it? How I present, all of that not possible, in virtual selling. So at a process level, the ability to tell stories, which is always important, even in face-to-face. However, in face-to-face, your physical appearance, your bonding also, created certain levers. Whereas in remote selling, in virtual selling, you have to develop rapport with people without meeting them, without they seeing you. Correct? Continuously. So the process element of building, let's say one important element in process was how do you craft stories while selling? Another element was that when you even have remote conversation, do you do it without opening the camera or with opening the camera? Correct? And when do you do it? At the beginning, end, or continuously? So these are small things which were required in process, which I think people have adopted very well over the last 8, 9, 10 months. And the last is tools. So there are so many tools. Right now, we are also recording this conversation on a tool, correct? Zencaster. However, in case of actual B2B selling, what I have seen is tools like whether it is Zoom or GoToMeeting, all of these were very useful. One specific capability in tool is video engagement, which is can sales owners record videos, not through marketing, by on their own. And there are tools like Loom, Vidyard, Hippo Video, if you have heard them. These videos, in a matter of 2 to 5 minutes, a sales owner can record videos and send to their clients, which was earlier used to take ages because of the process involved. So these are the people, process and tools is what I would say how virtual selling and COVID impacted.
That's amazing. You touched upon the golden triad of enablers, the PPT in short form, people, process, and technology or the tool. So definitely, even sales are enabled using this PPT, and nothing can go without this golden triad.
An acronym, PPT, I will remember that. I didn't think about it. PPT is a good one.
The golden triad actually got added with data or information now as an overlay.
Correct.
So, the fundamental golden triad that Naveen touched upon is now augmented with the fourth pillar, that is data and information, especially in the current generation.
Correct. Yes,
there is one more thing actually, like PPTX, because we are using the latest version of Microsoft Power People, Process, Technology, and the Transformation as
brilliant.
TX for Transformation.
Thanks for sharing, Naveen.
Yeah, absolutely. So now talking a little bit about your book, The Ultimate Sales Accelerator.
Yeah.
So what motivated you to be an author? Because writing a book is humongous. In fact, Sudhakar and I have started our own book, and it's been parked for some time, but we will resume it shortly. But it's a humongous task. You are able to pull it off.
Yes. Yeah, no, absolutely. It is a humongous task, as you said. And it is, the word humongous, I will add fulfilling too, because, once it completes, it is very, very, very fulfilling. And also during the journey, there's, they say that do you enjoy the outcome or do you enjoy the journey? Correct. For me, writing it every day, that for almost a year was very, very fulfilling, because the creative juices, when you start writing certain things, one question or the other, creative juices started coming. So coming back to your question, how did it come? So basically, there is a very famous video by Vishen Lakhiani called 3 Most Important Questions to Ask. And he's the founder of a company called Mind Valley, very famous in personal development space. So I watched that video, I think around 4 years before. And this video basically asks the listeners to, for 90 seconds, write the following. What would you like to experience? What would you like to grow as? And what would you like to contribute? So 90 seconds, write those things. So I had done that exercise, and in the contribution section, I had written writing a book. So, the seed was sown during that time, 4 years before only. Correct? Now the question was always there. I have to write, and then there are many excuses, busy corporate life, mostly on plane, all of those are excuses, they were there. So then what happened is this book came in my life, which is the book, the one thing. It gave me that idea, that asking that question, what is the one thing that I can do, which by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary. Basically focusing on one thing. Because of that, I started asking that question in different facets of my life or business. So one particular day, I was sitting with my wife, and this idea of book was always there. And I was telling this wife, what if on a breakfast tip, what if somebody asked me, in your entire professional sales career, if you have to share only one thing with others, which is the most fulfilling, what would you share? Now that is very interesting. The drift of the question was changed. Now the answer was use case selling. Correct? Use case selling. That is one technique which I crafted while working in startups, which has helped me sell in 23 countries across these different startups, bootstrapped, Series A, B, C, D. In difficult situations, and also helped me sell in life, because I believe sales is a life skill. Now that was use case selling. So when that question was asked, the answer came. What is the one thing? The answer was use case selling. So because of that, then I said, okay, I will write a book on use case selling, and to create intrigue about it, I named the book The Ultimate Sales Accelerator. And the subtitle was very interesting, because the subtitle says, one surprisingly powerful strategy to create epic sales in business and in life. So, it created that intrigue, because it didn't name the strategy use case selling in the cover of the book. It said The Ultimate Sales Accelerator and one surprisingly powerful strategy to create epic sales in business and life. So the entire book is about one thing, which is the concept which has inspired me a lot, which is use case selling. That's about how the book came.
Very interesting and inspiring. So I think these seeds have been sown during one of the inspiring talks, and also so is the intent of this Guiding Voice podcast as well. Even if somebody can get inspired from one of the nuances of several ideas that are being shared through this podcast, we will definitely be happy. So I'm sure if Vishen Lakhiani is going to listen to this episode, he would be on cloud nine, because he has been the inspiration for millions, and that has led to a book by an author, right? That's not a small thing. So can you share a few snippets about the book? What are the highlights, and especially to our audience catering to the technology and entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So the book, as I said, is about use case selling, which basically what it does is that it typically when we sell, we sell to a buyer, isn't it? You guys are also in technology, we sell to buyer. The use case selling, while it's difficult to describe the strategy, it's a 4-part pillar. I will recommend the listeners to read the book. But the whole concept of the use case selling is rather than selling to buyer, sell to a user. So what is the meaning of it? So let me give an example. Buyer, in simple terms, buyer is somebody who knows his or her requirements. User doesn't. So let me give you an example in technology word, real life example. So in 2015, I was meeting a chief marketing officer of a large bank in Asia. And as I entered that room, there were 6 executives, all suited, booted, nice looking, and they were there and they looked at me. And the question they had on their face is, why are you here? Primarily because they, as a large bank, they have all the software in the world. And I was representing a personalization and customer experience software category. So I said, thank you very much for meeting me. Can I ask you 3 questions to the CMO? And he said, of course. So I said, number 1, what is the number of unique visitors on your website? He said, 12 million. I said, thank you very much. Among these 12 million visitors, can you identify who are your new to bank prospects and who are your existing customers? And he looked at me, surprised. Then he looked on his right to his executives and their eyes were lower. And he looked at me, little flustered. He said, no. The third question actually made him very angry. I said, thank you very much. Can you personalize the experience of your existing customers on your website? He said, I just told you I can't even identify the existing customers within my 12 million audience. Then how can I personalize? And you see, I was talking to a chief marketing officer, one of the largest banks. They are supposed to have all the software in the world, isn't it? And they had, but those 3 questions actually converted them to a user category, telling them requirements or needs which they didn't know. So the whole book, the use case selling, is about that. Most of the people are looking for buyers, especially in complex B2B sales, technology sales, which you are referring to. The moment you make a buyer to a user, which is about unknown needs, unmet needs with resistance to change, once you identify them, then the buyer will become user and you will create rapport and conversion will happen.
I think it was Steve Jobs who said, give customers what they want is an old approach. But now people do not know, or customers do not know what they want until you give them that experience. So there was never this concept of iPod, these iPhones and all. So I really liked the way you explained the user and buyer difference. So buyer knows what he or she wants. I want a soap, so I'll go and buy a soap. But I don't know.
Correct.
There can be a scented soap. I don't know. And if someone gives, most of the things may end up failures, but those which become successful become super successful. Like the i-series, iPod, iPhone, iPad, and whatnot.
Correct. And interestingly, you mentioned about iPhone and even their launch campaign, where those are covered in my book in the B2B chapter, because I've analyzed those using use case selling 4-part structure, how these products, there are several examples, but 2 of the examples since you mentioned about i-series, one is the iPhone. The other is the launch campaign of iPhone. How did they launch it? By putting hoardings on every airport or streets, the big hoarding and say shot on iPhone, if you recall that. So that is covered as a part of, how did they made a buyer to a user, example which you were giving.
Yeah. Amit, we just talked about an age-old adage about taking care of customer or give the customers what they want. Vis-a-vis, customers do not know what they need until you give them that experience.
Correct.
So how does the technical sales, how are they different from the conventional sales?
Yeah, I think so. This is, first of all, the moment I say sales as a life skill, correct? And I define sales as served with authenticity, love, expertise, and smile. I think in my mind, we are selling all the time. Of course, there are nuances of products and services, and the easier way to demarcate that using a Forrester matrix. So which is, just visualize with me. On the x-axis, you have complexity of product. On the y-axis, you have complexity of buyer dynamic. And you have 4 quadrants, low, high, and low, high. You understood? So now anything which we are selling, right from selling a vegetable to Zencaster to a complex personalization product or a ERP product in technology, can be placed in these 4 quadrants. Let's take an example. If we are selling, let's say, vegetable to somebody, it is complexity of product is very low, isn't it? And complexity of buyer dynamic, are there hundreds of people or 7 people or 10 people buying? No, it is 1 or 2 people who are come to buy, isn't it, in that family? So therefore, it will be in that low quad. Let's say, take an example from technology world. If somebody is buying Google Mail, complexity of product, low, correct? It's an email. Complexity of buyer dynamic, primarily the IT head or, the manager there. Because email is supposed to be pervasive, na? I mean, we have to take an email. So, it will go to a low or medium category, not more than that, mostly low. But let's say, look at the product. Let's say somebody is buying aeroplane, right? Is a good example. Aeroplane. Now, complexity of product is very high and complexity of buyer dynamic is very high. You can't, one person can't. ERP, you mentioned about technology word. Complexity of product, because ERP connects all. If you look at core banking, all banks are connected now. Core banking software, personalization software for customer experience, all of these things, complexity of buyer dynamic is high, complexity of product is high. So based on, even in technology world, because since you asked technology, correct, I think the first thing to assess is that in which quadrant is the product fitting. Based on that, your entire go-to-market strategy. Again, if I take the example of PPT, correct, people, process, technology. All of that, and in the sales team comes as a part of people and of course process and technology. All of that will change. A lower complex product will not require field salespeople. It can be done from marketing, correct? Whereas a high complex product like ERP, which is sales cycles are also longer. It will not happen in 15 days. That will require, much more seasoned sales owners, also potentially longer sales cycles, a deeper engagement with the customer. Correct? So that is what I would say. While we can use this framework for technology sales, we can actually also use it for any kind of sales.
Amazing. That framework really helps in understanding the dimensions and the complexity and the visual appeal that you have mentioned about complexity of the product vis-a-vis complexity of the buyer. Amazing. Moving on from the sales standpoint, nowadays India, I think, is in top 3 of startup hubs in the world, if you look at it from the overall country, along with Israel and China. So if some startup is building a technical product, which is the current trend, I would say, how should they approach selling the product that they are coming up from the startup? And also when you position yourself with venture capitalists for serial funding or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you rightly said, India is a startup hub now, and it is growing every day. It's heartening to see, especially for me, because in last 10 years, I've worked across 4 startups. So I've seen the journey from bootstrapped, Series A, B, C, sometimes pivoted, and then Series D. So I really enjoy and I hope this continues, because startups represents hope, innovation, and growth for an economy. Now, coming to your question on selling, I think the easiest way to do is a 4WH framework. What does 4WH means? So why are you selling? The first step. What are you selling? Where are you selling? Who are you selling? And how are you selling? Now, what I've seen is a lot of startups focus on the H first. How are you selling? And that, according to me, in my humble experience, it is a mistake. How are you selling? Sudhakar, Naveen, you guys are seasoned technology professionals. You will agree with me that, without a startup thinking, first of all, why? Why do you even exist? Yeah. Why are you selling? Isn't it? I think we were talking about use cases. Sudhakar, you was mentioning about Steve Jobs, thinking that you have to tell the buyer what you need rather than buyer telling you, and therefore you will make the buyer as user. So that why element, there was a term called unique selling point. Inward looking, very inward looking, the organization. Actually, unique buying point, that's a point I mentioned in my book also. Unique buying point. Why starts with that? What is the unique buying point for your customers? They may not know that, like the example of iPhone you gave, Sudhakar. So that is the why. Why do you even need a startup? The second point is, what are you selling? So I have generally seen, that when you ask somebody, what are you selling? There will be complex slides and a modular approach is generally missing. In a startups, the other S is simplify, isn't it? So I would say creating modular and simpler products is the way to go rather than creating slides or pitches which are saying I create something very complex product. Modular and simple is what comes in what are you selling. So let's say somebody says I am doing customer experience personalization. On the other hand, you can say I personalize mobile experiences on app, isn't it? I mean, very, very modular approach. That is what I would say or you can say niche, whichever word is. Now the third point is, where are you selling? Now seems simple, but generally when a startup starts, a thought might be entire, we will sell to India, Australia, Southeast Asia, America. Our product is superlative. We will sell everywhere. Correct? It requires cost also, na? So where are you selling? If you start with a small segment or industry vertical or a geography, then the chances of creating success as well as optimizing cost are higher. And the fourth one, who are you selling? So this, in my personal example, since I have been selling personalization customer experience, I will tell my team, earlier I used to tell more often is that I will only meet chief digital officer. Because for me, when I was in one of the companies, if I don't meet chief digital officer at my level, that meeting is a waste. There is the only person, because what I'm selling, one from a strategic point of view, only he can understand. The other is from a writing a check point of view, only he can write. So my team can meet anybody, VP and above, no problem. For me, I have to meet chief digital officer and above. So who are you selling? The same thing when sales owners in startups or founders are selling, they need to be clear which titles are resonating with my proposition, rather than going and selling to everybody. Okay, chief digital officer might be one title, you may have three, but as long as you have clarity on that, if you have clarity on these 4 W's, why, what, who, where, then the fifth H is easier. How? So that feverishness towards H will be much lowered and it will become more productive if we focus on 4 W. That would be my recommendation to the startups.
That's fabulous. 4 W's and 1 H. I think you have simplified it. Definitely, that is a secret code which all our listeners, especially coming from the startup world, can leverage it. So, Amit, this conversation has been very professional so far. So, I'd like to spice it up by adding some personal element. We want to know more about other side of Amit. Okay.
Sure.
So, are you ready for a quick rapid fire round, Amit?
Of course. Put me on the spot, man.
All right. So I love the spirit. The spirit. So here comes the first one. One most memorable moment in your life so far.
I think if I have to only, since I'm a fan of one thing, so you put the right person to ask that question. So I think the most memorable moment for me is, I remember the date also, January 24th, 2006, when my first son, Tanish, was born. Sioux Falls, South Dakota, around 4:30 a.m. Tanish Ashwik Agarwal was born in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, 24th January 2006. I love my wife a lot. A lot of people know that. But during that moment, seeing my son, the nurse gave it to me and the operation was still continuing. It was a cesarean delivery. They gave it to me. And for that moment, I forgot everything in the world. I remember the word. The nurse said, "What lungs?" Because he was crying very loud. She said, "He's so tall." And I was looking in amazement. And for a moment, I even forgot that my wife is still undergoing operation. So I told, that is the only moment when I forgot you, Aisha. So that is the most joyful moment. Every time I remember it, it is harnessing the most resourceful. If I am most unresourceful, I will remember that moment. It will make me resourceful immediately.
Quite emotional, and I'm sure the first baby experience, something which will be cherished forever, right?
Absolutely.
Here comes the next one. In your next life, who would you like to be reborn as?
Yeah, so this is interesting. See, I focus a lot on personal development and spiritual development, correct? I don't have any feverishness towards moksha or nirvana. But if you really ask me, without feverishness, with action, without feverishness and with action, my desire would be to attain nirvana in this life. Therefore, the question of next life, continue to think like that. Again, the only thing is that what has happened is, earlier, just to be open with you, there was feverishness about it. 5 years before you would have asked the question, the answer would have been the same. However, there was feverishness about it. Now there is no feverishness. If it happens, great. If it doesn't happen, we will see. Correct? But for now, I'm very contented with that thought process.
That's quite spot on. Third question.
Yeah.
Like, which animal would you compare Amit with? And in case if you're not comfortable comparing with animal, probably you can compare with an object.
This is a very difficult question. Still have to ask me, the animal which I connect more with is rabbit. Why rabbit? First of all is agility. So one of the quality which I see within myself is the agility, that ability to traverse the path very fast, correct? The second is, I find the white color of rabbit and the whole demeanor of rabbit peaceful. So rabbit appears to me as a contented person, contented and peaceful person. So when I combine these qualities, contentment, peace and agility, that is what I am. Therefore, rabbit.
I definitely agree with you, because the way our conversations happened, we discussed last week and today we are in the interview. Yes. That's the beauty of agility and all. Yeah, I completely concur with you.
Yeah.
Here comes the first question. What is the best compliment that you have ever received so far?
A by the way, I've never shared this. I don't think I might have even told my wife. Your podcast might be the first one. So this was little embarrassing, yet there's a sense of pride. So it has happened a couple of times in two different companies, by the way. So one was my supervisor, another was a senior. And I used to tell them, this competition is there. They have so many things, this product, this big sales team, this and that, and they will listen to me, and with lot of humility and faith in their eyes, they will say, but Amit ji, we have you.
Super.
Now imagine my situation. I am actually trying to sell, we need this, that, but with all humility and faith in their eyes, they will say, Amit ji, we have you. And I was speechless. So that is, according to me, the best professional compliment I have got, which I have only shared here.
Superb. All right, here comes the next one. What have you dreamt of becoming in future during your childhood?
Yeah, so during my childhood, it's quite clear. I wanted to become a chartered accountant, actually. The reason was that I have seen some of my neighbors and some of my relatives doing very well as a chartered accountant, and lack of information because I didn't know what it was. I'm talking about 7th grade, actually. 7th, 8th grade. I somehow felt it is very posh, chartered accountant, the name. And of course, what I saw in my adjacent, I used to see a lot of people coming to that, which had a chartered accountant office, and I saw some of my relatives doing very well. So that was the thing. But as I moved towards 12th, I decided not to take commerce. And therefore, I would say rather than dream, it was an aspiration during that time. But yeah, I came on earth and I chose science and therefore went into engineering.
Interesting. So one last one for the rapid fire. If you were given a chance to change something in the past, what would it be?
I think for me, this again, working on myself, I have started reflecting more and more that past is only for learning. Past is for learning. Changing the past means that I am cancelling my learning. So from my perspective, also sometimes changing the past creates some feeling of regret. I think if I believe that past is for education and learning, then the thought of changing doesn't come in my mind. Whatever, right or wrong, everything was for highest good. It had made me a better person. And if I have become a better person, people around me would have experienced it in some way. So therefore, I would not like to change anything in the past. I would like to acknowledge my past.
Excellent, Amit. With that no regret statement, let's get on to the last question for this conversation.
Sure.
Such an amazing conversation we are having today. So, what will be your one piece of advice to those planning to make big in their careers?
To answer your question, I will again put it in a structure. So the structure is the term which I have coined called specialist doctor. So what is the meaning of specialist doctor? A specialist doctor has expertise in two areas. One is he has a deep expertise in a subject matter. For example, eye doctor or a heart surgeon is a deep expertise in a subject matter. And the second part is he's an extraordinary communicator. If you go to any doctor, you don't know that person, correct? If you go to a doctor for, let's say, eye checkup or a heart checkup you go, do you know that person? Most likely no, not when you are going. But you will notice that that person will create rapport with you because of two things. One is knowledge, because you know he's a doctor, correct? The second is how he or she talks. That person will put you at ease immediately, isn't it? I mean, if your experience of past talking to doctors. So therefore, I recommend everybody, in Hindi I say कि भाई अपने area के उस्ताद बनो, correct? Ustad bano. But the dimension of ustad is not easier. So I have coined a better term, specialist doctor. So two, on x-axis, deep expertise on subject area. On the y-axis, deep expertise in communication. Fourth quadrant, which is high and high, is specialist doctor. So whichever word resonates with your listeners, apne area ke ustad bano, correct? Yeah, become a specialist doctor. I leave it to them. But the two dimensions are same, which is expertise in a subject area and expertise in communication.
Thank you, Amit. Such a wonderful suggestion and recommendation for our audience. It has been pleasure, and thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to talk to you about the code of extraordinary sales, which is more a life skill than anything. Really appreciate you taking time for us, and thank you very much, and wishing you all the best.
Thank you very much, Sudhakar and Naveen. It was a pleasure talking to you. I really liked the informal conversation we had. And I think, as you mentioned, sales is a life skill. I hope through this session, more and more people leverage sales as a life skill. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks again, Amit.
Excellent. So, folks, if you are enjoying this podcast, make sure to check out the other technology-related podcast, Electronic Specifier Insights. Their editors dig into the electronics industry, how the new technology is shaping in post-COVID world, reviews from all the top electronic shows, and the latest technologies that the electronic companies are releasing. You can find them by searching Electronic Specifier Insights or by going to electronicspecifier.com/news/podcasts.
All right, so it brings us to the trivia segment of today's episode. And today's trivia is about data storage. So folks, do you know what was the physical weight of 5 MB, 5 megabytes of data in 1950s? Start thinking. All right, maybe it's a time for me to reveal the answer. So in 1956, 5 MB of data weighed almost 1 ton, which is close to 1,000 kilograms. Imagine what would 1 gigabyte would have been at that time. Interesting, isn't it? Thank you for listening. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Take care. Be safe. Until next time. Bye-bye. And we are signing off for today.